What a day. What a firestorm of a day. I mean, when we heard that Kanye was going to go have lunch with Trump, we knew that the response was going to be dramatic. And boy, was it ever. It was a 24-minute video, was the full video of Kanye meeting with Trump, with I think maybe 5 minutes of it Trump talking and 15 minutes of it Kanye talking, and then maybe 4 minutes of Jim Brown and other people. But Kanye dominated the conversation, and results and reactions to that conversation have been all over the place. Very, very polarized, which just seems to be the state of things these days. But you have people that think that this is the worst thing that Kanye has ever done, and that everything he said was absurd, that he's either the biggest asshole in the world or mentally ill and needs to be like checked into a hospital today. Or you have people that think everything that he said was completely fine and beautiful and wonderful, with very few people just being like, both. It could be he said things that were bad and he said things that were good. And, you know, I have problems with the bad things and I admire the good things. And let's keep having conversations. There's barely any of that, which would be nice if we just had more of that, I think, rather than just it's all bad or it's all good. I mean, things can be in the middle. But there's one topic in particular that I really want to talk about, and that comes from T.I.'s Instagram post about Kanye and the meeting with Trump. But before we get there, I do want to overview this a little bit, because there's going to be topics that we discuss over the next week. So you can see, if you haven't read the full transcript yet, that it's pretty extensive, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. So I actually made a document that looked at all kind of the points that I could see Kanye making. And I'm going to read them. I'm going to read them just in case you haven't listened to the whole thing, read the whole thing, but just want to get a brief idea of how he flowed through the topics. Larry Hoover, Monolithic Thoughts, welfare, shutdown of mental health institutes, increasing prison rates, met with Michael Sachs, who's the right hand of Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, the mayor. The hats, male energy from Trump, making him feel like a Superman in contrast to the energy he was getting from Hillary Clinton. Having balls came up, balls to wear the hat, balls to go and make deals and cause a ruckus in society, but to go and make things happen. Men of industry, American manufacturing, habilitation as opposed to rehabilitation, taking the stance that we can't rehabilitate because we were never habilitating these people to begin with. Education, 13th Amendment as a trap door, lack of representation and empowerment, false diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which that was kind of big news following Ye and what he talked about on Jimmy Kimmel, which makes me wonder when that happened, if it was just in the last month or two. He said his brain was equal on 3 parts, which when you have bipolar disorder, it's usually a difference in the shape of the brain, causing the instability either of high emotions or low emotions, but that he actually was just sleep deprived in a severe way that actually could have caused dementia early on, which shows how fucking sleep deprived this guy was. There are actually anecdotes from people saying that Kanye would show up and he would say that he hadn't slept for 2 weeks, or he hadn't slept for 5 days, or that he was emailing them or calling them at 3 or 4 in the morning because he was still awake. So this guy has had some pretty unhealthy sleeping habits for a long, long time. And that was one of the things we talked about back in 2016 when he was first hospitalized, that there was an argument whether it was actually mental illness or sleep deprivation. I am somebody that's also had bad sleep hygiene, often going to bed way later than I should. I mean, I'm making this video at 1:09 a.m. I was actually diagnosed with severe sleep deprivation at one point, and it was not good. But empowering industries, looking good, with reference to the president looking good, with companies looking good, with Ford making cars that are looking like the best cars in the world. Outsourcing everything to China, the problem that comes from that, which has created the prison factory system, as it's the cheapest competitive manufacturing we can do in America. A victim mentality regarding Bush, industry over racism, as more people focus on racism over industry, and that people don't have ownership of land or industry, so they focus on brands and owning brands because that's the only thing that they can own, which gives you more of a slave mentality to consumerism, which Kanye's been talking about since All Falls Down, up to New Slaves, St. Pablo, and this most recent few months. Police needing to have nobility, that the responsibility in the Black community to not cause so much violence against one another, law enforcement versus law power, love, lack of reparations leads to calling out racism, liberal control through racism, speaking complexly like a fine wine, stop and frisk, tax breaks for manufacturing, Yeezy ideation centers, school is boring, we need to mix curriculums, like playing basketball while you learn math. That sounds awesome. Mental health and art programs, block leader, curriculum designed by people who come from the streets, illegal guns being a problem. All we have is today, the hero's journey, which made me excited. Again, in the Make America Great Again slogan being a problem. So changing it to Make America Great. Trump and Kaepernick both wearing Make America Great hats at the Super Bowl. Being malleable in the infinite universe, that Trump and Kaepernick both wearing the same hat and showing up at the Super Bowl and talking shows that each side of the conversation can bend a little and find agreement. And that's being malleable in the infinite universe, and that we're all one collective group here in this time and place, and that we need to work together as humans, that this isn't gang shit, and that he loves Trump. So those are all the topics. Some of the ones that I kind of want to make videos on and talk more about are the bolded topics. But if you have any other requests or suggestions, let me know. So 8 minutes into this shit, let's get into the main part of it. And it is T.I.'s comments, which I will enlarge this. Oh no. Okay, that worked. T.I., who is Troubleman31 on Instagram, said, "Now I've been extremely patient and made it a point to not jump to any premature conclusions about Ye and his antics, partially due to the lessons learned from the outcome of other similar situations dealing with my brother Wayne, which I admittedly mishandled a bit in hindsight. But now this shit is next level, futuristic, Sambo, hopping Bob, Steven off Django ass shit Ye. From what I can gather, this is the most repulsive, disgraceful, embarrassing act of desperation and auctioning off of one's soul to gain power I've ever seen. Now, I recall you asking me to come with you to have this meeting, and I declined, naturally. But bro, if any time I would have been in there with you and you behaved that spinelessly in my presence, I feel that I'd be compelled to slap the fuck out of you, bro, for the people. You ass-kissing and boot-licking on a whole new level, and I refuse to associate myself with something so vile, weak, and inconsiderate to the effect this has on the greater good of all our people. I'm a true believer in it ain't what you do, it's how you do it. And this shit is regurgitating. At one time, it was a pleasure to work alongside you. Now I'm ashamed to have ever been associated with you. To all the people who follow Ye musically, socially, and even personally, who are confused, heartbroken, infuriated, let me make this clear. This shit ain't cool. This is a move Ye made for Ye. This is a play to put him in a position he'd like to see himself in. We're not on his mind as he makes these comments and decisions. Don't follow this puppet because as long as I've lived, I've learned that it benefits a man nothing at all to gain the world. If to do so, he must lose his soul. We just saw Mr. West's soul on auction. If you listen closely, you can hear the tears of our ancestors hit the floor. This is some dramatic shit. All I can say is I've reached my limits. This is my stop. I'm officially done. Trump and his little cookie boy. Us or else. Us or else. Ooh. And one of the things I wanted to get into too, it ain't what you do, it's how you do it. Which is a nice sounding thing. Like, it ain't what you do, it's how you do it. But also problematic. Like, you can very nobly and politely steal millions and billions of dollars from Americans through a loophole in housing loans. And you can do that very beautifully and respectfully. And, you know, how you do it, if that's all that matters, then it doesn't matter if you scam, if you steal, if you murder, if you are an asshole. It just matters that you do so in a polite and thoughtful manner. I think what you do absolutely matters, and how you do it matters too. Both of those things are important. And, you know, sometimes you move too far one way or the other. Sometimes it's more important what you did rather than how you did it. Other times it's more important how you tried to do something rather than what you did. It just depends on the situation and what's being done. For example, he says, you ass kissing and boot licking on a whole new level, and I refuse to associate myself with something so vile, weak, and inconsiderate to the effect this has on the greater good of all of our people. I mean, abolishing the 13th Amendment and talking with Trump, not abolishing the 13th Amendment, getting rid of the prison labor clause in the 13th Amendment is something that Kanye wants to do. It's something that T.I. recently made a video on, saying that Kanye was actually right in how he talked about this, but was just really wrong in how he said it. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But even T.I. was agreeing with that, saying that the 13th Amendment, how it's written, is a problem, as the slave labor of prisons is a major issue in America and a major issue to the Black community. And so Kanye wanting to change this somehow isn't considerate of the people. Kanye wanting to get Trump to stop and frisk isn't beneficial to the people. Kanye wanting to reform education isn't beneficial to the people. Him wanting to have curriculums that are made up by people from the streets isn't positive. Him wanting to get people like Larry Hoover and others out of prison and habilitate them rather than just let them suffer without any education or mental health availability, that's not helping the people. T.I. is just saying that this is all for Kanye dancing around to try to look good to Trump just because Kanye wants to be president. Is it just that he thinks that Kanye is so hungry for power that Kanye just wants to be president and wouldn't do anything? Or is it that Kanye wants to do things, is starting to talk with Trump about maybe starting to do those things, and also views if he was president, he could do more of these things and benefit people? I would make the argument that Kanye could have the benefit of people at heart, and how he's going about it is problematic, but not that he's necessarily doing this without any concern for the people. But one of the major points he talks about, but now this shit is next level, futuristic Sambo, hopping Bob, Steven off to Django. And Sambo, little known fact, you'll notice that an Uncle Tom wasn't brought into the discussion. And this article from blackamericaweb.com talks about this. To most of us, the phrase Uncle Tom is synonymous with a black person who has sold out their race. A lot of people over the last few months have called Kanye an Uncle Tom. The character Steven from Django, played by Samuel L. Jackson, is a perfect example of someone commonly referred to as a Tom. You may recognize Steven off to Django right there. In actuality, the term Sambo better fits the characteristics we often ascribe to Uncle Tom. It first came from Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. We get some history of the term. In Stowe's 1852 book, the character of Sambo was one of the slave overseers that worked for the cruel slave owner Simon Legree. Uncle Tom, a God-fearing slave with a compassionate heart, was tormented and beaten to death by Sambo, who regretted his act even as Tom forgave him as he was dying. Yeah. So he calls him a Sambo, which is a pretty insulting claim. And you can see that the first comment in response is Kanye, which has been a popular name to call Kanye over the last few months. And I'm sure a lot of people know what a coon refers to, but just for those that don't. Kooning is a verb derived from the word coon. A coon is a person of African descent whose sole purpose is to entertain white people. These coons started out as wearing blackface, characterized by having big eyes and painting big red lips on their face. These people would tap dance, play instruments, and sing. And I'm pretty sure... Did he say tap dancing somewhere in here? Nope. Okay. So I just made that up. I read some comment, I guess it was on Twitter. I was reading so many comments today, where someone was saying that Kanye was tap dancing for Trump. And this idea of cooning, of trying to entertain and appease white people, dates back a long ways, as there were a lot of slaves like Sambo, like Stephen, that tried to make their masters feel more empowered by complimenting them, sucking up to them, putting on an affected way of speaking, and acting differently than how they had. And then that even continued up into the 20th century, into the civil rights movements, even a little bit afterwards, as there were still people that thought that they could get ahead if they cooned out or cooned, and that this was this very demeaning way of gaining power or gaining a position. And it's been one of those things where some people felt that it was just them playing the game and doing what they had to do, and others felt, I would never do that. I would rather never get ahead, stay in the spot that I'm in, than demean myself in that way, which no commentary either way there. No. But this calling out Kanye for cooning, being an uncle, being a Sambo, a hopping Bob, a lot of it comes from the fact that Kanye hugged Trump. There were so many people focused on this picture of Kanye saying at the end, I love you, and getting up and hugging Trump. Where is it? You said, I guess, I love you. I know. Did I? But I don't want to put you on that spot. No, I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here. And then they hugged. So I actually saw one person on Twitter compare it to a scene, I forget the movie, Amistad, maybe? Where the slave coming off the boat runs up and hugs his slave owner because he's so excited to be protected by the slave owner, and making the comparison between Kanye and Trump, which, oy vey. One of the things that Kanye has talked about, and he said it in this speech today, is monolithic, as I just can't type monolithic. He said, really the reason they imprisoned him, referring to Larry Hoover, is because he started doing positive for the community. He started showing that he actually had power, that he wasn't just one of a monolithic voice, but he could wrap people around. So there's theories that there's infinite amounts of universes, and there's alternate universes, how I'm moving back to Chicago, and it's not just about, getting on stage and being an entertainer and having a monolithic voice that's forced to be a specific party. People expect that if you're black, you have to be a Democrat. That's getting into the monolithic voice that he's talking about. Monolithic, of or relating to a monolith, made of only one stone, a monolithic column, consisting of one piece, solid or unbroken. Constructed monoliths are huge blocks of stone, characterized by massiveness, total uniformity, rigidity. So monolithic thought being that this group, this collective, just all has to share the same identity of thoughts, and that there can't be any movement one way or the other, that you're just part of the whole. And Kanye talked about this back in April. I haven't done enough research on conservatives to call myself or be called one. I'm just refusing to be enslaved by monolithic thought. So that was April. And then good old Dictionary.com. Kanye West isn't held back by monolithic thought, and neither are searches. Queries for the meaning of monolithic have skyrocketed on Dictionary.com. Then again, August 10th, Kanye West, blacks are supposed to have monolithic thought. We can only be Democrats. This is from the Jimmy Kimmel interview. And that's my Google search. Then again, September 30th, from SNL. Kanye West delivered a pro-Trump rant on SNL. The audience booed. But he said he warned that people can't be controlled by monolithic thought and mentioned disgraced comedian Bill Cosby. You can't always have, when you have a black subject matter like Cosby, that you have to be a black comedian talk about it, he said. Which I guess that's not really the point I wanted to get at. But the idea of this monolithic thoughts is something that was really strange to me when I first heard it. Because I understood it in smaller groups, right? Like if you were going to Ohio State University, that you should support Ohio State sports, right? There's this idea of monolithic thoughts that Ohio State is great at sports and you want to represent the school that you're attending. If somebody attended OSU and they were wearing a University of Michigan shirt, the biggest rival of Ohio State's, there would be a reaction to that because it went against the monolithic thoughts that an Ohio State University student has to support Ohio State. Like, I get that in that capacity and kind of always assumed it. Like when I played baseball, there was a certain thought to the baseball team. We had a culture on the team where I was going to show up and start talking about Final Fantasy VII and video game RPGs and all kind of the nerdy things I was into, just because it didn't seem like it fit the culture of the baseball team. That was at the time and place for it. But I'm sure there were people on the team that would have liked to talk about Final Fantasy VII. It just didn't feel appropriate to me at the time. But I never thought about monolithic thought regarding race, which, I mean, white people, I've never heard anybody say, like, you're not acting white because you like this thing, or you're not acting white because you don't like this thing. Like, you are a Democrat, so you're not white, or you're a Republican, so you're not white. Like, nobody, I think, feels that way. You're just a white person that does this. Your race didn't really define how you had to be or act. I think the closest I ever saw that was people saying you're white regarding kids that liked hip hop in the late 90s. And they started to dress more with streetwear, street fashion, more in the hip hop culture. And people were telling them, like, you're white, you shouldn't be enjoying this. And they were just like, fuck you. I'm going to listen to this music because it's good music. And now we are where we are with that in culture. Black culture so much defines the culture of the world at this point. It kind of blew my mind when this topic first came up regarding Kanye and him saying that he liked Trump and then went on to TMZ and tried making his slavery for 400 years sounds like a choice comment that just came out like he was saying that slavery back in the day seemed like a choice. Which Kanye speaking just... But Ta-Nehisi Coates released this article, and Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the most prominent black writers today. His books have been huge hits. He actually got to write in the Black Panther comic book series for a while. He's highly respected by very, very smart people across the world. And him writing this article regarding Kanye and Kanye's TMZ appearance just blew my mind. Like, look at that picture. The fact that he's saying, I'm not black, I'm Kanye. That just because Kanye had a couple thoughts that deviated from the popular perspective of black culture that he was no longer black, that his skin color itself isn't what mattered. It was the things that he said and the things that he thought that mattered. And this article actually ends up comparing him to Michael Jackson and starts to make the case, like seriously makes the case that, Jesus, Michael Jackson died because he lost black culture. And that if Kanye doesn't come back to black culture, look how much he wrote about this. That if Kanye doesn't come back to black culture, he will self-destruct and have an early death, much the way that Michael Jackson did. So it's not only that Kanye has to think the way in the Monolithic Thought, but that if he doesn't, he's not only not black, he will die early. Wow. Wow. And that's a thought leader who is very thoughtful, well-respected, nuanced in his approach to situations that he's written about, just taking that approach to it. I don't know. I just, as somebody that's never had to deal with that kind of pressure, to where whatever choice I made, I wasn't going to be told that I'm not white, that I'm not an athlete because I like video games, or I'm not an athlete because I like anime, or that I'm not a writer because I like sport. That nothing that I've never felt my identity attacked or my relation to my race attacked for the things that I liked. And I completely understand that Kanye wouldn't want that either. Like, as somebody that's been lucky enough to not have to go through that, I can't imagine living a life where I would have to deal with that and be part of that monolithic thought. I would get anybody wanting to get out of that, whether it's, you know, a culture that's making you feel that way, a religion that's making you feel that way, a town that's making you feel that way, that you have to just be this certain thing. No. So Kanye wanting to push back against that notion that as a black man, I can only like and do and say these certain things. As a entertainer, I can only like and do and act in certain ways. This is one of the things that got into Ye, the album. Kanye was talking about getting through the simulation, breaking out of the simulation. That as a celebrity, he was expected to act a certain way, be a certain way, talk a certain way, and trying to fit himself to that mold really sapped his spirit and took his energy and took his vitality, and he didn't feel like himself. And it wasn't until he broke through that by putting on the hat that he got away from trying to act how everybody wanted him to act. And that's one of the things, like, I know myself, if a celebrity acts a certain way, I'm just like, why are they acting that way? They should be more, you know, PC or more approachable, or like, this is their job to be a celebrity or to be like an actor that goes out and talks a certain way. Like, celebrities have to perform all the time. And when they're out in the public space, they can almost never be themselves, which is something that we can all really do. I mean, we do have to tone down in some ways when we're like in the mall. You don't talk when you're in the movie theater or at the mall or somewhere at a restaurant the way that you maybe talk or act when you're on your couch. Like, I'm not going to the movie theater and sitting there with my pants off watching the movie. But when I'm at home, yeah, I'll take my pants off and watch the movie, and it's wonderful. We do have to act a certain way when we're out in society. We do have standards for behavior, but celebrities have this next level of expectation of how they're going to act, how they're going to behave. And we've seen Kanye push back against that for a lot of his career, and now entirely kicking through the reality of that and the expectations of that to be just himself in this situation, and to be ignorant in a way that celebrities aren't supposed to be, to talk about topics that celebrities aren't supposed to be talking about, and to get through that, to not just do that as a celebrity, but to do that as a black man in America. He really doesn't like that idea of monolithic thoughts. And reading T.I.'s response to Kanye, all I could think about was, if it was a white man doing this, or an Asian man, a Hispanic man, any other race, I don't know if people would be writing these posts about them. And I think that just kind of reinforces the point that Kanye is making about this monolithic thought, that he is supposed to act a certain way or everybody's going to hate him. And it doesn't matter really what he says or does in that case. I mean, T.I. says it matters how he does it, not what he does. But I think if you're going against the monolithic thought at this point, it doesn't matter what you say or do. It just matters that you're out of line. And that's so restrictive to me. Like, I obviously think there are boundaries. You shouldn't be able just to go and murder somebody. But if it's just like, I don't know, your political affiliation or what kind of music you listen to or anything like that, this is going to maybe seem like a dumb comparison, but I don't know if anybody's ever watched the show Blackish. But Blackish is a upper class Los Angeles black family, and it stars Arn Anderson as Dre, and he has a wife and an oldest son, an oldest daughter, and 2 younger sons and daughters. And Dre hates Junior, and that's his oldest son. And it's not just for like, you know, a few episodes, but then they're mostly like lovey-dovey and a good father-son duo. Throughout the show, Dre, who's very like pro-black culture, pro-black traditions, really doesn't get his son, who is the antithesis of that. Junior loves anime. He loves Lord of the Rings. He loves following rules. He doesn't like sports. He loves studying and homework. And Dre will literally at times say like, "You're not my son." And it's not done in like necessarily a funny way. Like, you can tell Junior's upset and that the rest of the family's like, "Oh God." It actually surprises Dre when he's like, "I think I love you right now." And then Junior will say something and be like, "Nah, never mind. I don't love you." And that's gone on the whole time the show's gone on. That the one character that's not really into traditional black culture gets ostracized in a lot of ways. And the only time that Dre is connected to his son or proud of his son in the show is only when Junior does more of the traditional black cultural things that Dre expects from him or wants from him. And that's always been one of the things on the show that I've been like, why can't Junior just be Junior and be loved? And watching everything go on with Kanye to where he's not part of the monolithic thought and is similarly being pushed away or told that you're no longer black because of it is really sad to me. Like, I get being upset about Kanye, but at the end of the day, he's still a black man in America. So that was one of the main talking points that I wanted to discuss. It's something that I've been wanting to discuss for a while, but wasn't quite sure how to shape my thoughts around it. I still don't know if they're very well shaped, but I think it's a talking point that was at least worth exploring in some capacity. And I don't know if we're going to see Kanye succeed with this and maybe see a change. I feel like there's probably already been changes happening in the world, in America, regarding expectations of people from all cultures. Like, I know it's very common to have Indian people, Jewish people, my heritage, that are only supposed to be doctors or lawyers. And if you're not a doctor or a lawyer and want to go into another field, like, parents and grandparents freak the fuck out to the point where parents will disown children that aren't going to go to med school, which is crazy. But those things are loosening up in ways. So I don't think Kanye's necessarily doing this alone or necessarily at the forefront of something that hasn't been happening naturally over the years, but I think he's highlighting just how intense this monolithic thought has been for various people in various spots of culture. And it's probably worth thinking about your own ideas of monolithic thoughts and how they apply like outwardly, how you maybe view other people in your groups or social circles, and maybe how other people with monolithic thought have treated you, and how it maybe defines how you have acted based on the expectations of others and their monolithic thought. So things to keep in mind, things to discuss further. If you want further discussion, let me know, or, you know, start commenting and we'll see what happens. Let me know what other topics you want to hear about from this document, and I can get into those later. Though over the weekend, who knows what the fuck is going to happen and what we might be talking about come Monday. But I hope you all have a great weekend, and if you enjoyed the content, subscribe. If you're not enjoying the content, let me know why. I'll try to improve and do what I can. But thank you for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.